The sun rose over the horizon as it had for billions of years, casting its golden light across the earth. But something was different. The leaves of the trees, once vibrant and green, now hung limp and pale. The blades of grass, usually swaying gently in the breeze, lay flat and brittle. The air smelled faintly of decay, a scent that had been growing stronger for weeks. Scientists had warned of this possibility, but no one had truly believed it would happen. Photosynthesis, the process that had sustained life on Earth for eons, had stopped. The first signs had been subtle. Botanists noticed that certain plant species were producing less oxygen than expected. Farmers reported stunted growth in crops. Then came the mass die-offs. Fields of wheat turned yellow and withered overnight. Forests, once lush and teeming with life, became silent graveyards of dead wood. The collapse of the food chain was swift. Herbivores, deprived of their primary food source, starved en masse. Predators, with nothing left to hunt, followed soon after. Humanity, dependent on both plants and animals for sustenance, faced an unprecedented crisis. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a leading plant biologist, had been one of the first to sound the alarm. Her research had focused on the molecular mechanisms of photosynthesis, particularly the role of chlorophyll and the enzymes that facilitated the conversion of sunlight into chemical energy. When the first anomalies appeared, she had dismissed them as experimental errors. But as reports poured in from around the world, the truth became undeniable. Something had disrupted the very foundation of life on Earth. The scientific community scrambled to understand the cause. Some hypothesized a genetic mutation, a catastrophic error in the DNA of plants that had spread globally. Others suggested an environmental trigger, perhaps a new pollutant or an unknown cosmic event. But no one could pinpoint the exact cause. The only certainty was the effect. Plants could no longer convert sunlight into energy. The world was starving. Governments declared states of emergency. Food rationing became mandatory. The global economy, already strained by climate change and political instability, collapsed under the weight of the crisis. Riots erupted in cities as people fought over dwindling supplies. The internet, once a beacon of human connection, became a wasteland of despair, filled with pleas for help and reports of mass deaths. Dr. Vasquez and her team worked tirelessly in their lab, isolated from the chaos outside. They had one goal: to find a way to restore photosynthesis. Their research led them to an ancient strain of cyanobacteria, the very organisms that had first evolved photosynthesis billions of years ago. If they could understand how these bacteria had survived, perhaps they could engineer a solution. But time was running out. The oxygen levels in the atmosphere were dropping. Without plants to replenish it, the air was becoming thinner, harder to breathe. People in high-altitude regions were the first to suffer, their lungs struggling to extract enough oxygen from the depleted atmosphere. Hospitals overflowed with patients suffering from hypoxia, their bodies starved of the very element that had once been abundant. In a desperate bid to buy time, governments turned to artificial oxygen production. Factories that had once pumped out greenhouse gases were repurposed to extract oxygen from the remaining reserves. But it was a temporary fix. The planet's oxygen supply was finite, and without photosynthesis, it would eventually run out. Dr. Vasquez's team made a breakthrough. They discovered that the disruption in photosynthesis was not due to a genetic mutation, but to a previously unknown interaction between solar radiation and a newly emergent atmospheric compound. The compound, a byproduct of industrial pollution, had altered the way light interacted with chlorophyll, rendering the process ineffective. The solution, they realized, was not to fix the plants, but to remove the compound from the atmosphere. The challenge was monumental. The compound was pervasive, embedded in the very air humans breathed. Removing it would require a global effort, a coordinated shutdown of all industrial activity, and the deployment of massive atmospheric scrubbers. But with the world in chaos, such coordination seemed impossible. Yet, in the face of extinction, humanity found a way. Nations set aside their differences. Scientists shared data freely. Engineers worked around the clock to build the necessary technology. It was a last-ditch effort, a gamble against the clock, but it was the only hope left. Months passed. The oxygen levels continued to drop. Millions perished. But slowly, the scrubbers began to work. The compound's concentration in the atmosphere decreased. And then, one day, a single leaf on a single plant in Dr. Vasquez's lab twitched. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The chlorophyll had absorbed light. Photosynthesis had resumed. The news spread like wildfire. Hope, long thought lost, flickered back to life. It would take years, perhaps decades, for the planet to recover. The ecosystems would need to be rebuilt, the food chains restored. But humanity had survived. The world had come perilously close to the brink, but it had not fallen. As the first green shoots pushed through the soil, Dr. Vasquez allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The crisis had revealed the fragility of life on Earth, the delicate balance that sustained it. It had also shown humanity's capacity for resilience, for cooperation in the face of existential threat. The world was different now. The lesson had been learned at a terrible cost, but perhaps, just perhaps, it would not be forgotten. The sun rose again, its light filtering through the leaves of a young sapling. The air was still thin, the scars of the crisis still fresh, but life, tenacious and unyielding, had found a way. And for the first time in a long time, the future did not seem so dark.